All right, let's see if this stream is working. It should be. Looks like it is. It's just going to take a second for it to kick into gear. Nice. Stream is good to go. I'm going to post this comment of the artist that I am referencing quite a lot. Cool. So for those of you who are joining in a little later, or just watching this after the stream, I mean, um, if you just check the comments, you'll see the artists in which I'm studying from. The artist's name is Michael Saltruk. I don't know how to say his last name, but I'm a big fan of their work. I like the way that they simplify a lot of environment stuff, and I think this will be a good kind of step for me. I'm a big fan of hyper stylized aesthetics. When I first started out learning something as complex as like anatomy, I remember just looking at comic book artists like Joe Mad because their understanding of anatomy was a lot more simpler, but it was so visceral and so iconic. So it's really easy to kind of start to see how to stylize the muscles. And then when you start to accompany that with more realistic anatomy references and then other artists that were a little bit more advanced, it was just easy to kind of meet in the middle. I still think that I should be training my anatomy, actually. I started looking at some of my work and I was like, yeah, I think I can come open up an anatomy book yet again. I think what I'll start doing is go back to life drawing. Life drawing is an incredible way to train as well as practice what you might already know. So I'm going to use a lot of his artwork as just kind of like advice, visual advice on how I will tackle this image right here. So my goal is to essentially make a good impression of this image, kind of in the style of Michael. And so let me go ahead and get started there. And yeah, I'm doing a live stream just because I think I ought to. I want to do a live stream of it because it's a little bit less glamorous than like me just painting something that I'm more familiar with. And honestly, it allows me not to talk the entire time. And if I am talking, I'm talking about what I'm like thinking about, which in itself could be very valuable for those who are watching and trying to understand how I go about understanding things. So I think the first thing that I'm going to try to accomplish here, looking at this image, is I'm probably going to just hyper focus on the biggest masses and the shapes that they're making. And then once I get that in place, the next thing that I'll do is start to try to think about how to capture all of this detail without having to hand paint every bit of it. Again, looking at Michael's stuff, I could see that there's a little bit of that intelligence throughout their work. And so I want to kind of capture that. They also use really interesting brushes to kind of help them create detail. So I wonder if I can do something like that as well. But like I can see this is really clever. So I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of masking and or layers. So let's try that. Let's try that first. So the first thing I'm going to do, just group all this. And then I'm going to clip mask that. Okay. And I'll increase the thumbnail sizes for you guys. Normally I like them pretty small, but just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to stick to pretty strong brushes. In fact, I'm going to get rid of transfer. So this has nothing going for it other than, and even anything here. Okay, that's off. That's off. Yeah, I think this is it. Just going to turn off transfer so I can kind of just really draw. Let's start. Actually, also the background will probably be this gray, and I'm going to take artistic liberties here, and I am going to color and saturate to my own standards here of like amplifying the image. Because when I look at a lot of these references from Michael, what's interesting is that they absolutely exaggerate probably a lot of the colors. I'm sure there's a reference, or some references that allow them to kind of think about how to populate these scenes. But uh, their color choices are clearly inventive, and that's really cool. And I think that's the part of like a really good viz dev artist. The value that they bring is that they can reinvent a scene that seems pretty normal in a lot of interesting ways. Oh, hey, what's up, folks? We got a couple people up in here. Nice. Yeah, happy weekend. Yeah, not gonna probably spend too much time too, because I'm looking at the clock. I think after 20, 30 minutes, regardless of how far I am on this, I'm gonna go take the kiddos out, get some ice cream, hang out with them. Been working quite a lot. So let's do this. Let's begin. So the first thing I think to myself is, okay, I can probably get away with lassoing each segment independently. And I think I'll start with that. I'll start with like pretty big masses. It's probably the best way to do this. So we'll start with this. And I'm gonna, again, stylize it. And because these are so segregated, like these two sides of the wall, I could probably get away with keeping it all on one end. Oh my god, did I just get bit by a mosquito? Okay. And this is like the same color as this wall here with the black shelving here, which I might make a completely different mask. And then this is like a brown wall. And again, this instance, I'm going to take artistic liberties and just start putting in my own colors using the image to the right as a strong reference. And then, although it's the same color as the back wall, I think I'm going to give it some difference there. And I realize this brush also got a bit of color jitter, so I'm going to apply that to this back. And I might have to be a little bit more cautious. Okay. So far, so good. I'm already realizing that this is too large. These like silhouette breaking shapes here. So I'm going to redo those. And they're much higher. Maybe something like that. That might make more sense to me. I think as I add the shelving, actually, it will solve this problem. Okay, so let's just close this out then. Cool. So the next thing that I'll do is I'll add the floor and the ceiling. And I think I can make those into their own layers. And I can also probably create them, both of these features on the same layer. So let's do the floor first. Sorry if I'm like giving you guys season with me zooming in and out. It's just how I operate. This is so big. Okay. About the ceiling is like maybe an eighth of the height of the entire image here. And then the floor is maybe like a sixth. So using these markers is going to be very helpful. We might not even see. So I'm exaggerating. This is definitely more than an 8. So let's try to do this. Okay, or less than an 8. And then the ceiling, same color, but we'll make it a little bit darker. Let's see how that goes. Maybe even more desaturated. And just kind of delete that. And then the floor, it's absolutely like this kind of like this gun gray, like an ashy gray. And I'm not going to try to get the perspective perfect. What I'm going to worry about is just the vibes. So let's get this kind of ashy gray. Cool. I see like there's like the door, there's a ceiling fan, but I'm going to try to go for, again, all of the things that I think make this feel really Interesting. I think this is actually much more skewed. And so let's try to start to get some of this stuff, like the actual silhouette breaking shelves. Let's get that stuff in next. And then I think I will do these little record aisles next. And just kind of trust the process. Follow along with what I'm looking at here. While I'm doing this, how's everyone doing? How's everyone's weekend going so far? Those of you who are in the chat. What are you guys drawing? Are you guys drawing alongside me? If so, tight, man. You know, I'm gonna go a little. Well, actually, I don't have much time. Okay, so I'm gonna absolutely speed run then. But what I was thinking, what I was saying to myself just right now before I decided I should actually not do what I was about to do. What I was gonna say is, like, I think I should just absolutely segregate every element, like all these different pieces. I should truly segregate them. But looking at the time, I'm like, I don't know if I'll be able to get away with this. I think if I can just get the impression, that will be a win for me for this study. And I can worry about impressions in some other time. Or sorry, more of the details some other time. Or maybe I'll learn something along the way of doing it this way. So I'm not too stressed about it. I'm just going to kind of follow the process here. Yeah, and then the bookshelves, let's not worry about that. Let's now add, oh yeah, see, so now that I'm looking at this, it's also, I think, is a lot more skewed. Again, I'm not trying to get perfect perspective, but I don't want it to be so far off that I'm fighting against it too much. Yeah, that should be good enough. And I think what I might need to do also is to literally just bring this up. I think that might be enough. I think that is the vibe. Yeah, see, part of me is already like, should I even worry about that perspective? Because, watch. This is kind of what I mean by, like, just following, like, the image and the feels rather than trying to fix something like perspective, even though it's like, hold on. I don't know why I couldn't. Okay. Fixing the perspective, because I might just not need to worry about that stuff, like the back wall and like the floor and all stuff, because if you just look at the shape of it, like this is all I really see of the floor is like this kind of trapezoid shape, like just the shape, not thinking about the perspective, not thinking about all that stuff, right? Yeah, see, and so it seems to me that I might have worried too much about that. Like this right here, getting this more accurate seems like what I should have like really cared about. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and give this darker value. Oh, some of y'all drawing hands, dude? Dang, brave. I believe in you. Follow your heart. And see, this is another big piece. And again, I'm looking at actually like the negative, like the space of the floor and what shape it ought to kind of resemble more than just try to get the perspective right. And I'm realizing that's like ultimately what I should care about. In fact, part of me thinks that although Michael might absolutely lasso and create or paint individual shapes and then comes around and corrects a lot of them later, part of me is like, I should just paint this raw with no layers or nothing, just to practice my understanding of kind of the shapes and how they're being constructed more than trying to what you call it, trying to like get this perfect lassoing. And this is the beauty of studying. This is why I like to study, because it makes me realize a couple things as I start to do it. I think a lot of times people get really hung up on how they should study and what should study and how to learn and all this stuff. And I did a video just recently called like, art is supposed to be hard. Like to me, like I feel that I made a bunch of mistakes already. Like I already feel this way. I'm like, I wonder if I could have done this. I wonder if I ought to have done that. There's already a lot of self-doubt, right? But the difference between kind of my feelings of self-doubt and what I feel I see in others is that when I have the self-doubt, I don't evacuate my emotions. Like I don't like lead into them and think, okay, and you know what? I'm already committed to thinking I'm going to start painting this now. I'm going to just try it now. I'm just going to paint this raw. And I am going to just leave this as a reminder to myself. Hold on. Get the layers here. And I did put it in a group. Oops. Here, let's just duplicate this. This in its own group. It's a reminder of myself of kind of this approach. And I have done paintings this way. But the difference is whenever I paint paintings this way, I always have a very clear agenda, And as I'm studying this, I'm already like realizing like, no, I should just be tracking like the shapes more. Like I think I just want to get better at like understanding the shapes. Because I've already realized how I was getting hung up on the perspective and all this stuff. I do think that there needs to be a time where I sit still and try to just cut all the pieces out, but I don't have as much time as I'd like to try that out, So what I'm going to do instead is just absolutely focus on shapes. But this is exactly kind of what I'm saying. In fact, I'm going to just leave all this stuff. I'm going to leave the work that I already started. That I feel a lot of artists tend to get hung up on. And, I'm going to move the reference because here, let's do this. Keep having to hide my color swatches, and I'm not really even using this reference over here, but you got to make some adjustments. Okay, let's move this so it's more in view. Okay, cool. So now I can keep my colors up the whole time without having to worry too much about hiding them. I think I can move this over even closer. Okay. It's just ultra wide. That's why. It would be better if I just put this underneath, but it's okay. You live and you learn. There's a little bit of value of like going back and forth. But anyway, as I was like saying before I kind of went off on a different tangent, I find that a lot of times that these feelings of like, fuck, it's not going well, or like, I don't understand why this is not coming together, or I'm like having a hard time trying to put together this image from what I'm looking at, and you start to kind of like have all of these crazy thoughts, not realizing that like this is the whole point of studying. Studying is to help you find what you do not know and don't understand. Like I said in the video that I just posted, like, not knowing that something is supposed to look a certain way and like not being able to make that happen, like not being able to, like, let's say look at a face, or like somebody who's drawing the hands, the person who's drawing hands, not knowing how to draw a hand accurately and kind of getting caught into that feeling. Like that's part of the deal, like you're supposed to not know. That's the whole point of trying to learn. Like if studying was like a video game quest, right, where you do a quest, and at the end of the quest, regardless of whatever level you are at the end of it, you get something, right? You get like a sword or some money or whatever. Like this is what makes video games so attractive, because you are playing this thing and you do this quest. It tells you to kill like 10 bunnies. You kill 10 bunnies, and then you come back and they give you like some sort of rabbit pelt for your character. And now you feel really skilled. Or sorry, you feel really rewarded for that short amount of effort. But you don't feel super skilled. You just feel like, okay, I did that one thing and I see some progression. And then you do the next thing, right? Then you go and do, oh, see, now I'm thinking about using the lasso. This is interesting. Because I'm now letting the instincts kick in. And so you do this quest, and then the next thing you know, oh, this color jitter is too intense. The next thing you know, is you got a sword, and then the next thing you know, you got a helmet, and you've leveled up, and so forth and so on. You start to accomplish all of these different miniature goals until you're like a level 1700,000 badass, right? But the game doesn't kind of reveal to you, obviously, that you are working really hard. You were putting a lot of time and effort into that. And I think with art and trying to get good at art, for whatever reason, people don't realize that when you're studying and you're training and you're trying to learn something, that you are definitely getting these little quests accomplished. You're definitely getting more and more information, and you're becoming more skilled. It's just hard to feel it while you're in it. You know what I mean? Like while you're in the midst of it, like you can't see these little miniature victories. It's only with long sprints of effort over long periods of time that you can start to see the progress more clearly. You know? And so for me, like when I'm like, oh man, I'm having a hard time with this, my immediate reaction is not that I am bad or I don't that I personally suck or there's something wrong with me. I just double down. I'm like, oh shit, I don't understand this. So let me try something else. You know? I always think like if I have a hard time with something, that I just will do it more. I just do more of it. I do a lot of it. And wouldn't you know it, I get really good at stuff quite often. And for me, like watching a lot of young artists kind of get super discouraged immediately because they're like, it's not coming together. Then yeah, I'm like, yeah, I mean, well, why would you think that it would come together so quickly? Like, what is the rationale here? Again, like when people say to me, like, I did a study, and at the end of the study, like, oh yeah, I have this great story actually. I'll tell you the story. It's like pretty much what I'm about to say. So I remember I had a student, they were talking to me about studying and practicing, and they're just like, you know, they were just telling me how, like, okay, you told me to study, like my painting and whatever. So I went ahead and studied the painting, and I did that. And as I was painting and as I was doing these things, like as I was doing the study, I felt really bad. Like I felt everything I was drawing sucked. And I felt that all the stuff that I was doing was just wrong, and I was not getting good, and everything felt terrible. Like how do you prevent that? Like how do you make it so that it's like I can learn something from my studying? Like how do I overcome these feelings of like it sucks and it's hard and all this stuff, you know? Like what am I doing wrong? And I love that story because I remember when they said that, I basically like digitally looked at them in their eyes because we were all online. It's an online course. So I digitally looked him in the eyes and I said, boss, you're not doing anything wrong. The problem that I have is that you're thinking you're doing something wrong. You are thinking that you're failing. But in reality, you're just revealing what you don't know. That's all. You are just revealing to yourself what you don't understand. And your reaction to this shouldn't be, I don't understand this, so I suck. You know? Your reaction to this should just be, you don't understand. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be more complex than that. you don't understand how to control your values. You tried this thing, you saw this video, this person said you should do this, you tried it, you looked at some paintings, you tried it, and you still don't understand. Great. Try something else then. You know? Like, that's kind of what I just did here. I was doing this and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, focusing less on the perspective, because that's what I did immediately. I was like, and it was literally this shape that reminded me, like, this is what I was like trying to recreate this shape here using the shelving here. That's it. I was like, oh man, let me focus on trying to just capture shape. This is something I prefer anyways. I love shape design. So let me just focus on that more than just trying to lasso and try to capture all this stuff accurately. Let me see if I can get better at my shape understanding. So I pivoted within my study. Why? Because I want to learn. I'm trying to get good, y'all. And so I'm like, okay, if this gets me closer to probably understanding how to capture this type of environment using a certain method, then I will follow this method, you know? And then as I get more and more skilled at maybe doing it this way, then it'll be easier for me to maybe do the lassoing approach that was making it a little bit harder for me, you know? This is why the advice of study is the most meaningful advice you can get from most of your art educators. Like, look, hold on, before we go on. Look at the space between this, shape-wise. And look how little space I give myself here. See, this is a great example of, like, fucking perspective got me fucked up in this bitch. In fact, me trying to even worry about perspective was a distraction. Because I don't really care about that. Like, what I'm trying to do is make my images feel like an environment effortlessly, like Michael did here. And so worrying about perspective seems like the right thing to do because you hear people talk about it all the time. And let me be clear, you should learn perspective, but that is not my immediate goal. And I'm going to prove it to myself with this really quick example of just looking at the perspective of this and seeing if I was even, I've got to scale it universally. Okay, let's line up this line to the edge of my thing. Yeah, see? Even the space complaint that I made, because I'm looking at the shape of this empty space here rather than the perspective of it, already, like that's what already made me think, oh, my perspective was a little bit off here. The powers of shapes. Anyway, you know, when you're doing these studies, like, the goal is to learn. If you want to feel good about learning, like, if you want to feel good, like, I'm learning something every single time I do an image, then you're going to have a hard time learning. Because that's the thing. Like, learning is a bit of like attacking of your ego. It's gonna show you that you suck a lot more than it's going to show you that you're good. Especially if you're actually trying to learn. You know? I remember when I was trying to learn some visual effects stuff in Unreal Engine, and I opened up the effects panel, and as I was starting to do it, I was like completely flabbergasted because I didn't understand anything. I didn't understand any of the stuff that was presented in Unreal Engine when it came to visual effects. Like, nothing made sense to me. I remember this. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is all this? And I was so confused and I was so lost. And I genuinely felt like an idiot. I felt like I didn't even know how to start. I was like, I don't even know where to begin. You know? Like, at least with concept art, people told me, like, you know, you should practice anatomy if you want to be a character concept artist and what have you, you know? And that just made it easier for me when I, you know, wanted to jump into that world, you know? So I get the value of, like, trying to have somebody give you that kind of jump start. But visual effects, I think, was like the first time, like trying to learn the visual effects stuff. Like I didn't even know what to begin to look for. I didn't even know what to Google. I didn't know like who to ask. You know, legitimately was like kerfuffled. I was like, what the fuck is this thing? You know. But here was again. Here's my reaction to that. So I was like, I don't know a goddamn thing about any of this visual effects stuff. So let me look at the Unreal manual, literally the book that tells you how to use visual effects. Because they had like a tutorial that I was following, but there was like just so much. There was just so much stuff I just didn't know within the tutorial. Like there was just so many like little parts that like I just would have never understood just from watching that tutorial alone. This is why I think it's really important to respect that many of you guys are at different stages of your knowledge. So not all instructors, unless they have a deep dive and talk to you often, can give you like a very meaningful prescription. You know, so that's why we tend to say just study. Because it's just the best advice regardless of the situation, right? Anyway, so I literally like pop open the book and start reading the freaking instruction manual for like Unreal. I was literally reading the book. I pulled up my sketchbook and I was just reading and reading and reading and reading for quite a long time. I read like that entire day, the book. And I wrote lots of notes. I was learning some more terms that then helped me have a better understanding of what to probably Google, you know. If I didn't understand something, I read it again and again, you know, until something made sense to me. If there was words that they were using in the book that I just never even heard of, like in my native language, like English, you know, if I was like, what the fuck is even this word? I just like Googled that, you know, I just did some deep analysis, deep research. And so the moral of this, though, what ended up happening is that I got really like involved with what it meant to do, you know, visual effects. Like I spent that entire day, and so then the next day when I woke up, I just felt a little bit more knowledgeable. I rewatched the tutorial. I had all my notes next to me, and I was like, "Oh, okay. I think this is what they are trying to get at. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, I didn't know this." Like, because there was a lot of shorthand, they just kind of assumed you knew what these words were. They kind of made more assumptions. The tutorial's more intermediate than it was beginner. And I began to start to see the matrix, for lack of expression here. And I was able to then make some really cool visual effects. And now I'm actually pretty reasonable at it. I've done it for some projects, a couple jobs that I've worked at. I will create these visual effects for the game. I remember I made like the asteroid field for the Expanse game that I worked on. So if you play that game, if you played it, like there's an asteroid field that's all me. It's essentially some tech art stuff there. They might have made it better or refactor it for better performances, but it was working fine when I left. And so I'm just saying, like, I did all that. I studied like all this visual effects. Again, literally had no clue where to even start. I remember, like, I'm telling you guys, I felt like a complete moron. I felt like I had no idea what the hell any of this was, right? I was just completely lost. And I came out of that realizing this is the thing that really, oh, see, my shapes are all off again. So this bookshelf should have been scooted over more. This door, though, needs to be scooched over more. So I'm going to meet halfway. It's just not going to be perfect. I'm just going to cut it off like right here. Knowing full well that this is not an accurate representation. I'm okay with that. What what came from this experience, what I got from this, and I told myself, this is like a bit of like self-love here, a little bit self-motivation. I remember telling myself, I said, oh, okay, listen, AJ, what you just overcame right now, like these feelings of feeling stupid, these feelings of like not having any clue how to solve these problems, these feelings of like being unable to even know where to start, and these feelings of like overwhelmingness, you got through it. And this is the difference. This is the difference between those who kind of make it through some of these larger challenges and those who do not. I remember telling myself, like this is it. This is why, AJ. I remember telling myself in my mind, why you became a pretty good concept artist, why you became one of the fastest painters, why you became this or this and that and that. This. It's not because of any God-given gift that I had, obviously, or anything like this. It was because when I was confronted with a true, genuine, purely unknown consequence and unknown circumstances, and not knowing the result, and not knowing where it will take me, and not knowing how it will help me in the future, not knowing any of that, literally zero skill and knowledge. When you said you wanted to do it, you did it. And it does help me. And like I said, I actually used some of what I know in visual effects on actual production. I'm not a visual effects artist by no stretch of the imagination, nor would I be anywhere near a senior level visual effects artist. This is what I'm not saying. I am not saying any of that. What I am saying is that if I decided to be, that I would be, that I would become a senior level visual effects artist. This is the only point I'm making here. And so whenever I do these studies, like, again, this is something that I don't think I will ever show anybody. I don't think this is something I'll post online and be like, look at my study, right? In fact, most people never see a lot of my studies outside of when I do a live stream. I think it's the best way to show an actual study, because I might not finish it. For sure I'm not going to finish it. I have to go. The time's run out. Which is okay, because I actually still learned something. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about this process. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try it with something else. I did that like line art stuff. I think the first live stream that I did. That was valuable. I still think about it. I still think about how like the scaffolding and like the structure of the architecture, how it was built. It made me in my little, I have these little post-it note drawings. I do a lot of these little post-it note drawings of just buildings and stuff. I did like when I was at a coffee shop. Drew my coffee shop stuff, like what was in front of me, like the architecture and all that stuff. And what I'm trying to get across to y'all is that, like, that's all I does, all I does is just study a lot. And I do not ever get discouraged if I don't know something. Well, let me rephrase that. That's not entirely true. I do definitely get discouraged. Like, I was discouraged. I felt discouraged. I felt upset. Like, I don't want to lie. I absolutely felt upset and frustrated when I was like trying to learn the visual effects stuff. What I'm saying is, that's not a deal breaker. Feeling upset and frustrated is like absolutely not a deal breaker. To me, what's usually a deal breaker is, do I even want to do this? Do I want to be a visual effects artist? And the answer is not really. I just wanted to learn Unreal more, and I wanted to be able to like put some stuff in my little video game, and visual effects is just part of that. So it's more of like the bigger picture. Like, I'm learning visual effects to be better at Unreal Engine. That's what I actually cared about, and I still do care about. Like that bigger picture. It's less about the specific aspect of visual effects. That's the point I'm making here. Is that when I decided that I wanted to do that, that to me is what really was on my mind. It was more of that stuff, But anyway, yeah, but it's not a deal breaker. But like, yeah, wanting to do it, seeing if there's any real meaningful value for me to do it outside of just professional skill, that's enough of a deal breaker for me. Like if I don't actually care to do it, then maybe I shouldn't worry about it. Maybe I should look at some other stuff that I do care about and try to perfect that. So for instance, I actually want to be good, like incredibly good in environment concept art. Like I really want to be really good at this. I think that if I can do this, then it will open my true potential as a world creator, creating tons of different worlds. Right now, I am just decent at it, just from proxy of doing it here and there, not because of like me aggressively trying to learn it, you know? But now it's the time. Now I feel that way. I want to aggressively learn this. And so that's why I'm doing this study now. And the deal breaker is, my perspective was off. No, not at all. Not even close to being a deal breaker. Or I over-indexed thinking that perspective mattered for what I'm trying to learn right at this moment. You know? So, anyway. Yeah, now I'm kind of speed running these last parts of this painting because I need to, like, get out of here. And I just want to fill it out. There's a couple things that in my mind, while I was doing this, by the way, like there's a couple things that I already telling myself. First of all, let's try this again, but focus aggressively on the shapes, and then give myself a 30-minute timer. Like give myself 30 minutes truly, hyper focus, and see how far I can go. Do this dozens of times. Try to do another thing I'm going to probably give myself, like self homework. Try to do just segments of what he's done here, because there's some stuff like I know like the shadows and the gradations is something I want to get in here. Otherwise, this is like very flat outside of like the lines of perspective, and I want to try to eliminate that flatness somehow. You know, I want to finish an entire image too, because it will allow me to see what information was worth keeping, what information wasn't. And I was just kind of twiddling my thumbs. Work with like creating more hard edge texture brushes, so I can kind of see if that will help me overcome certain challenges. Maybe I do lasso, but I think of larger strokes. These are just all my mental notes. Nothing I'm saying to you guys is something that I'm saying that is a good idea. I don't know. I'm literally just thinking of stuff to practice and train and study and look into, you know, and then try it again. And I might find, oh, this is a terrible idea. Or I might find, oh, there's some glimmer of hope here. Or a mixture of both. But a study is a study. Like I need to study, I need to understand, I need to ask questions, I need to look at the results of my study and ask more questions and then try again. If this is not what you're doing, if you're like trying to draw something and it doesn't look good, and then you think that you failed your study, then I think you don't understand what studying means then. Like literally look up the word study, and it will say a detailed investigation and analysis of a particular subject. It doesn't say you try something and now you are awesome. You try something and now you learned everything. Like that's not what it says. And so whenever you hear that word and people tell you that you should do that, I think that's what they mean. They're not telling you, oh, like, yeah, just draw one life drawing thing and it should be really pretty good. You should understand anatomy. Like that's not what they're saying. They should, when they say study anatomy, they mean like gestures, perspective, form, the actual skeletal structure and muscular structure, how those muscles connect to the bones, how those bones and muscles look when they're in different postures and poses, how does skin sit on the muscles and bones, how does fat, skin, muscle, bone all work together, how does light affect the bioluminescence of the skin in certain circumstances, how does wet skin look like, what is like the different complexion of skin between people. This is anatomy, detailed investigation of what that is, an analysis of anatomy. That's what that means. To kind of be critical of somebody to say, oh, study anatomy, what does that mean? Like they mean like literally study anatomy. If I was to tell you to study physics, I think most of you understand what that means. Like, oh yeah, I would like need to go to school. I would need to study all of the different maths, like calculus, algebra, basic. Like, you wouldn't say like, what does that even mean? Like, you would know what that means. You just wouldn't want to do all that work. right? You wouldn't want to actually go through all that years of training. And for what it's worth, learning anatomy as an artist isn't as crazy deep as you might think it needs to be. You just need to know at least a lot of the surface level anatomy, and you can get pretty far with just that knowledge alone. You don't need to be a scholar. Okay, that is not what people are telling you should do. I am absolutely nowhere near a scholar when it comes to anatomy. There are some artists that are. You know, I think when I look at my buddy Geo Natkill, like I think he's he's close to a fucking scholar when it comes to anatomy. He like knows the veins in our bodies. You know what I mean? Like he knows it by name. I don't know that shit. And so there are some people that are like that, but that they would even agree that that's not necessary. You don't need to know that much, right? They just prefer it because that's like their skill. They want to be really proficient at that, you know, which makes him an incredible sculptor because he's like, he knows how the fucking person looks like underneath their skin. So this is, again, how I study. If this looks foreign to you, then maybe try it out. Realizing, okay, I actually need to actually think and try to understand stuff. And if I don't understand it, not get upset, try to something else, ask more questions, investigate further. This is the difference. If you are not in this mindset, you are always going to be discouraged so much more often, and you're going to feel frustrated so much more often. And it's like, you're not doing anything wrong, even if you just copy. Like, that's part of the deal of studying. That's part of the stuff and what you can do to study and to improve. It's not the only thing. There are many other things to do. So being discouraged and frustrated that you're not learning every second you put a paint stroke down is wild. Like, that's not the point. That is the difference between us and the people who write AI prompts. They don't want to fucking draw. They don't want to learn. They just want other people to do it for them, and they can just write a sentence. You know, and this is why I have no stress about AI art taking over. I see companies like saying, "Hey, we're gonna shift over." My buddy actually posted like a school's gonna try to teach people. Like, I'm like, no, man. Like, you are gonna make a bunch of people that are incredibly unskilled. This thing that I'm showing you, like even the way that I study, is an incredibly powerful skill. It allows me to see a problem that is presented to me, creative problem that is presented to me. It might not be a painting. It might not be a concept art or design. It's just a problem. But because I have a mindset of like, we have to investigate, we got to look into it, we have to discover more information, and having that trained and proving it with my ability to paint well is an incredibly powerful skill that many of these people that are like, quote unquote, adopting these AI tools don't realize that they're hamstringing themselves in the most precious skill of them all, which is being able to actually do hard work and to understand how to solve hard problems. That is it. And so if you are sitting there already turning over, if you're having a hard time learning, then you are not doing yourself a favor either. And that's what I'm trying to get at. You're hamstringing yourself as well. The reason that I'm like 41 years old and I'm still pretty competent, still ahead of the curve to even young artists, even athletically, I just deadlifted almost 500 pounds for 2 reps like 2 or 3 days ago. Because I'm like constantly trying to look into how to even be stronger in health and fitness. This is not an accident. This is because I do hard things, you know, to try to become more skilled in the things I care about. And that's what actually makes me a valuable asset. That's what makes me more effective as a teacher even, because I'm like, I've experienced it. I've taught thousands of students. I've seen it all. I've seen really hard cases and work with them. I try to find students and accomplish or help them accomplish their goals. And some people are in really bad spots. And it's a badge of honor as an educator to not teach people who are highly motivated and highly talented and highly skilled already. It's to take people that want to do that and make them do that. Maybe they don't have the talent. Maybe they don't have the motivation, but finding ways to keep them motivated, keep them moving forward, and keep them pushing is more interesting to me as a teacher than just helping the people that are already there. Don't get me wrong, I love teaching people like that, you know, But I'm just saying, I think it's a better mark to an educator to take people that you would have never imagined would have been able to accomplish these goals, and they did, right? Fucking Mr. Miyagi up in this bitch, right? So anyway, I gotta get going. Gonna go take the kids out, get some food and ice cream. Thanks for hanging out during the stream. Appreciate y'all. I pinned the artist's name on the top of this thing, but I'll post it again here. His name is Michael Shotok. I don't know how to say his last name. He's awesome though. Absolutely follow him if you don't or like a lot of his work. It's incredible. This is like my immediate goal is to try to get something that looks and feels a lot like this. And you can tell I got a bit of way to go. When it comes to more realistic stuff, I think I'm far more effective because I will use tools like 3D too and photo bashing. But I don't want to do that. I want to actually be a highly skilled environment painter just as much as I am in my character designs. So that's kind of my immediate goal as of now. There's some other stuff that I like too. Like I like painterly style. So there's another artist I want to kind of emulate. So see where that kind of takes me. Kind of combining a few of my favorite artists ultimately. So anyway, hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And I'll see you guys tomorrow in tomorrow's video, whatever that might be. Cheers.